Welcome to the January the 23rd, 2001 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie. And we are so pleased. Our It's Happening segment is number 414. And on this magic date in January, we're very honored to document the history of Grand Prairie and some of those that have made history in Grand Prairie and are still continuing to make history to this very day. We're honored indeed to have the former minister of mine, but now a wonderful young man that has been very important to the culture and also to the spiritual life of many people, not only here in Grand Prairie, Texas, but for around the many places that he has found that the good Lord has sent him. And we're so pleased to introduce to our viewing audience today, Stanley Singleton. Brother Stanley, we're real glad to have you with us, young man.
Thank you, Ruthie, very much.
Yes, and you have brought the helpmeet of the world for you. And Joyce Singleton is so important. And Joyce, we're so glad to welcome you to the dais today,
Thank
my dear.
you.
Yes. Now, y'all are a real special couple in that you have a bio that is second to none. And you can see I'm not even going to refer to a bio, but you're going to tell us about the real Stanley Singleton. And then I'm going to ask you a few questions that will make this audience know just how very important you are to us today and have been in the past. So would you look out into your camera and give us a little bit of the genealogy of Stanley Singleton, where you were born, your parents, and if you had siblings, we'd like for you to kind of tell us a little bit about those. Now you have 3 or 4 minutes to do all this good stuff.
Thank you, Ruthie. I appreciate this today, appearing here.
Yes.
I was born in Marble Falls, Texas. Marble Falls is just on the highway, the Colorado River. And I was born in Travis Peak. There's a peak mountain down there, and it is in Travis County, so they named it Travis Peak.
All right, and then name your parents.
My mother died when I was 13 years old, and my brother died when he was 21.
All right, you'd give us those 2 names to document your history. Your mother's full name, including her maiden name, if you have that at handy.
Beulah Burton Singleton.
All right, and your brother that passed away, we'd like his name in your record.
Willard Singleton.
Okay, and so you have lost 2 that are very near and dear to you. And when you were growing up in Travis County, I'd need your father's full name.
Duke Lewis Singleton.
All right, and what did he do for a living?
Well, we lived out in the hill country.
All right.
And therefore we did that which would conform to the country around there. He was a rancher.
He was a rancher, okay.
Uh-huh.
All right, did Stanley, when he grew up down there, before he started to school, did you have to do any chores or do all of the good things that some of we country kids had to do when we were growing up?
We surely did. And even though there were several of us,
Yes.
then we did still had to do a lot of work. What we thought was a lot of work.
Was a lot of work. All right, your other siblings, other than the brother that you lost, would you like to name them?
Hugh Singleton.
All right.
The oldest was Lorena Singleton.
All right.
And Ruby Hutt,
All right.
and Jane Crow,
All right.
and I believe that's Mary Lou.
Where did you fit into the pattern of all? Were you the baby of the family, Stanley?
No, I came right in the middle. There
Right
are
in the middle.
3 before me and 3 after.
Oh, that is wonderful. All right, and growing up down there, did you start to school in Travis County or where?
Yes, we went to school in Travis County. It is in the community where we lived.
All right, what little community was it, and what little school did you start out with?
Travis Peak, named after the peak of the
All right.
country down there,
All
and
right.
it's pretty important in that area
Yes,
down in there.
Was it a big teacher school, or did you have a two-room school and two teachers?
Yeah, it was a big school because we just had one teacher and one classroom for the 12 grades.
Oh, that is wonderful. Oh, that makes such a wonderful story today when our children happen to view our show, to know that you went to school in a one-room school. That is so wonderful. And after you left the Travis School, community school, where'd you go?
I finished high school at Paducah, Texas.
Paducah, Texas.
My brother and I were in the same grade, but we were both seniors. And so we left home and went to Paducah and finished high school at Paducah, Texas.
Okay. And in Paducah, Texas, and at that high school, did you have favorite teachers that really did impress you, that really did help Stanley get off on the right foot, especially in the high school years? And tell us something about your high school years.
There's one particular individual there, a fellow, that somehow he and I just kind of drawn to each other.
All right.
And he was very fine. He was a science teacher.
The science teacher?
Uh-huh. And I always enjoyed him very, very much.
Very, very much. He took a personal interest in Stanley and says, let's study this science together.
He did. And he wanted you to get the lessons. And he approached it from a personal standpoint of what he wanted.
What was your favorite subject other than science in high school? And maybe did you develop any real fine friendships with the people that you still get with today that went to high school with you?
Well, most of them, a lot of them were the kin, so we naturally on that part of it. I don't think at any time there were more than 20 students
Okay.
In the classroom,
You know,
with all grades.
that teacher really was a magician.
I mean, it was.
And since you are a retired teacher, and so is Joyce, I know that goes through your mind. I wonder how they handle all of this.
Now, sometimes they'd get the older ones to tutor the younger
Yes,
ones, take them off in the corner of the room, and have all this going on while they were having class for another one over in here.
All right, and from Paducah, Texas, where did Stanley go?
We went back to Austin, Texas,
Back
my
to-
brother and I, and he was drafted into the service.
All right.
And I left there and went to Abilene Christian College.
Okay. Who was the one that really knew that you needed to go to college to further your education? Who encouraged you to do that?
Martin Crass.
Martin
He
Kraft.
later became my brother-in-law, but he influenced my life perhaps as much or more than any person on the face there.
That is wonderful.
And, so we went up there and I entered Abilene Christian.
All right, when you got to Abilene Christian, I'm sure that you got there on a scholarship and everything was paid and you didn't have to work. I'm a
Didn't work
dreamer.
quite that way, but we did get it worked out.
Oh,
and
you-
I was grateful for that.
Yes, that is wonderful that you had some help. And
Yes.
you spent how many years at ACC at that time it was known as?
That's right.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sorry I lost your question.
How long did you stay at ACC?
I stayed there 4 years.
All right, and when you entered, what was on your mind that you were going to do, that you were going to be your absolute major or minor before you changed your mind a couple of times?
Yes, I from very small have had ministry, being a minister in my mind,
I see.
and working and qualifying myself for the good that I can do serving mankind.
I think that is just wonderful.
And that's the reason I perhaps appreciated ACC so very much.
When you decided to go on this particular route at ACC, was there a special professor or someone else that sort of took you under their wing, or did you have any encouragement from your counselors, or what? What kept you in school for 4 years to be a preacher?
Well, this Martin Kress that I mentioned a moment
Okay.
ago taught me down in intermediate and high school.
Oh, he did? Mm-hmm.
And then my brother and he and myself lived together out at Paducah.
Uh-huh.
And so he then came on out to ACC.
Okay, that is wonderful. And I'm going to leave you at ACC. And I've got to get Joyce and get her somewhere into this picture. So if you'll just hold everything in abeyance, we're going to talk with Joyce. And Joyce, would you look out into your camera and tell us a mini genealogy about you, please, ma'am?
I was born in Wichita Falls, Texas, and I think we lived there about 3 years. And then my father moved us to Fort Worth, Texas, and he was employed with the Continental Oil Company in Fort Worth. I started kindergarten in Fort Worth.
All right, now let's get back and get your parents' names. We need to do that, and then get your siblings. Maybe we do that.
Yes. My father was Walter Thomas Cox, and my mother was Veda Lamb. My mother passed away when I was 5 weeks old, Ruthie, and my dad remarried the following year, and so my stepmother, who is still living at age 94, raised me.
How wonderful. Let's get her name, please.
Pearl Cox.
Pearl.
Alma Pearl Cox.
Oh, she was a wonderful lady.
Yes.
To take a baby doll like you were at that time. Oh, how wonderful.
And
All
she's
right.
still in wonderful health.
Okay. Do you have brothers or sisters?
I have one brother, Jimmy Ray Cox, and two sisters, Catherine and Mary.
Okay. And being moved to Fort Worth, Texas to start to school, you remember where you went to elementary?
I only went to kindergarten there for a few months, and then my dad moved us to West Texas, to Alney, Texas.
Alney, Texas.
And I grew up there the entire rest of my life, with the exception of 3 months.
All right, let's talk about Alney. When you moved from Fort Worth, Texas in kindergarten out to Alney, was that a big change for you? Did you get a good reception from the teachers and the kids? Tell us a little bit about Joyce having to move.
The move didn't seem to upset me any. I started to first grade in Alney and had a wonderful teacher. She was a very strict teacher, as I remember, but she was a very fine teacher. And then I had her again in the 8th grade, the very same teacher that I had in first grade. All my school years were good years. I had good teachers. Alney was a wonderful town. They were friendly, warm. We were only a little town of about 3,900. So we only had one high school and 3 elementaries, I believe, or was it 2?
Which of the elementaries did you attend?
I went to Roosevelt and Bernie,
Okay.
depending on which side of town we were living on.
Roosevelt and Bernie, which of those did you feel the nearest and dearest to and have the best time and the most favorite teacher of all?
I went the first 4 years to Roosevelt
All right.
and the last 3 of elementary in Bernie. And I suppose my favorite teacher of all of them was probably Ms. Roberts, the one who started me in first grade and then finished me in the 8th grade.
In the 8th. Oh, how wonderful. All right, and then on into high school, and when you moved from what we call the 7th grade into high school, what a big change that was, and how did you set your sights into the high school? What did you do? Your accomplishments, some of your favorite things and favorite teachers.
I suppose my favorite thing was Glee Club. I enjoyed singing in the Glee Club.
Oh, good.
And I'll always remember Miss Fanny. She was a miss until I believe my last year in high school, and she finally married and became Mrs. Ramsey.
Okay.
And I also enjoyed my speech class.
All right.
And I think the reason I enjoyed it so much is I was absolutely scared to death to get
yes.
up in front of a group.
Yes.
And it was that year that I sort of learned I could get up in front of a group and talk without...
Without fainting.
Right, without fainting.
Yeah. Oh, that was wonderful. And your favorite subjects then would have to be speech and the Glee Club in high school. And when you graduated, did you do any sports or anything like that, or your extracurricular?
Not in high school.
Not in high
no,
school.
just elementary.
Okay, and when you graduated from Alney, what happened to Joyce then?
I graduated a half a year early
All
from
right.
high school. The reason being I had made a visit to Abilene Christian College, and had met some wonderful young people there, and so I only lacked one credit, and I asked my mother and dad if I could just please take that one course by correspondence and go on to college early. So they allowed me to do so. So I came back to graduate with my class in May, but I went ahead to ACU in January.
Okay, and going to ACU from Olney, Texas. Tell me about that.
Oh, I loved it.
Okay.
I loved college. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And what was your dorm, and what did you do, and what was going to be your career of choice?
I stayed in a little house first. It was there were 14 girls, college girls, living in it, and the nurse was our counselor. And I stayed there my freshman year, first half of my freshman year, since I started in January. And the 14 of us grew very close, and we enjoyed one another very much. Then the following year, I stayed in McDonald Hall, and I stayed there all of my freshman year, the rest of my freshman year. And of course, it's then that I met my husband.
Yeah.
But my dad decided that my sister had gone through North Texas, so he decided that I should transfer to North Texas. So I transferred to North Texas and decided to make teaching my career. I think partly because I was following in my sister's footsteps.
Yeah.
But I did make it my career, and my father, of course, thought it was a very good profession for women.
Yes, yes, of course. And tell me about meeting Stanley.
I met Stanley at Abilene Christian.
When you were a freshman?
I was a freshman and he was a senior.
Oh, my.
In fact, he was in his last semester and I was in my first. But he was the assistant to one of the professors in one of my Bible classes. And we had to memorize 300 verses of Scripture and go and say it to the assistant. And I would learn my verses just as fast as I could and hurry over to say it to Stanley. And he also had to grade our tests. So that was the way I became acquainted with him.
That was wonderful. And then when you decided to pull up roots and go to North Texas, how did that affect your relationship with this assistant to the person that was in charge of listening to Bible verses?
Well, he graduated that May.
All right.
And he taught school and preached the following year and would make weekend trips to North Texas to see me.
But you were still keeping in touch?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Were you engaged formally yet?
No.
You weren't. Okay.
I think it was in the spring of my sophomore year when he proposed to me.
Okay. All right. He's shaking his head and said, that's right. He's checking you out. And on into North Texas. Tell me about North Texas. You stayed there until when?
I graduated from North Texas. I stayed the remainder of my college days.
In what year?
I graduated in January of 1948.
1948. 1949.
Pardon me, 9.
Yeah, okay. They're having a big 50th anniversary celebration, I believe, there this year.
Are they?
I saw something on television about that. You're going to have to check into that. They may need you.
That's right.
All right. And you did finish with a teaching certificate.
Yes, I did.
Where'd you do your student teaching?
I did it right there in the demonstration school at the university in the 3rd grade.
How wonderful, 3rd grade.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to leave you in the 3rd grade.
All right.
In Denton. But I've got to get back with Stanley. Now, Stanley, after you finished at ACU, she told me something about your going on a sojourn and you started preaching and working a little. What'd you do?
Well, when I left out there, I moved here to just north of here in Valley View.
Valley View.
And I taught school at Valley View.
What grades?
I taught the 6th grade.
Okay. And being a man, 6th grade teacher, I know they were excited about seeing that because we don't see as many of the gentlemen as we do, and I know you were a role model for many. But at Valley View, in the 6th grade, what happened to you then after that? Were you preaching while you were going
Yes.
there at Valley View?
Yes. I preached at Valley View and the era both.
Okay.
And then after I finished that year there, I decided the next year to leave teaching and go into preaching.
And to go into preaching.
Full-time.
And where was your first full-time preaching assignment?
Just 10 miles from Valley View at Sanger.
At Sanger, Texas.
Yes.
Okay. And all this time you were still a real close relationship with
Yes,
Miss Joyce?
very much so. She
yes,
was sweet and precious.
Oh, sweet and precious, wasn't she though? And a good-looking girl that was going to be teaching school and help you make a living so you could go fishing, right?
That's right.
Wonderful. Oh, that is great. All right, and now I want to know when you all married. What, did you wait till you were out of college, Joyce?
We liked 1 month.
You liked one month
That's right.
being out of college and
We married in December, and I graduated in January.
in January. Oh, that is wonderful. All right, now, where'd you go from there, Joyce?
We lived in Sanger, and our first child was born while we were in Sanger, Iris Kay.
All right.
And then we moved from Sanger when, let's see, I believe she was not quite 2.
Okay.
And we moved to South Texas.
All right.
It was really the only place in Texas we worked outside of Central Texas. And we lived in South Texas for 3 years.
For 3 years.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Stanley, tell me about South Texas.
We enjoyed the South Texas very, very much. It was at Kennedy,
All right.
and had a real good work there.
And you were the minister there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you stayed there how long?
About 2.5 years.
2.5
3
years.
years. And then we moved from Kennedy to Denton.
Back to Denton, back to the
Denton.
old home base, Okay, and how long did you stay at Denton and what'd you do in Denton?
We stayed at Denton until I got an invitation to come to Grand Prairie.
To Grand Prairie, Texas. Okay. And in Denton, were you at a Church of Christ there in Denton or in the
Yes.
outlying areas?
No, it was in Denton. It's over by the women's school.
Okay, you got uptown then all of a sudden here, coming from Kennedy to Denton in a college town. I think that's wonderful. And what was Joyce doing all this time?
Well,
She was
she
taking
taught
care of
through a
babies,
little
wasn't
while,
she?
then she was taking care of the children.
Taking care of babies. And we have Iris Kay born, but we don't have any other children along the way yet, so we want to pick those up as we go along. And Joyce, tell us about moving back to Denton. Did you feel like you were really back home, sort of?
Oh, yes. Knew the territory quite well.
Yes,
And David was born while we were in Denton.
In Denton, okay.
And then I was expecting Mark when we moved to Grand Prairie.
To Grand Prairie, Texas. Okay. What brought you to Grand Prairie, Texas? The invitation that came to you by the way of whom?
Burbank Gardens congregation here in Grand Prairie on Northeast 27th. And I received an invitation from them to come down and start a new church on South Grand Prairie here.
Okay.
South Grand Prairie was growing, and it was going to the south.
Name me the churches that you've been a minister of since Burbank along the way.
Since Burbank,
Southside Church of Christ over near Lee Middle School, was that next?
on the south side, yes.
Yeah, that was next. And then where?
Dallas.
Back to Dallas.
Back to Dallas on the
Where
road.
was the last place that you were actually the minister to before you retired? I know you do a lot of preaching now too.
Yes, and I have for several years
Yeah.
in capacity like that. But I was at Burbank.
When you formally retired. Okay. I've got to get this thing on. Louis says we have only 4 minutes left, and I don't think we've used up our 30 minutes, but we've got to get to Joyce. Joyce, where all have you taught in Grand Prairie, please?
I taught 22 years. I started my teaching career at Fannin Elementary
Oh, yes.
and was there 14 years, and then I moved to Milam, and I taught there 8 years.
And what
And-
grades did you teach at Fannin and Milam?
4th grade,
Fourth
all
grade.
the time.
All the time. And then from Milam, did you graduate, did you retire
Yes,
from,
I did.
from Milam?
Yes.
Oh, yes, and it's an exemplary school. That was a very fine place. And who was your principal?
At Fannin, I had Mr. A.B. Kane.
All right.
At Milam, I had Dale Brown and Joe Jackson. And I also had Amos Turner and Marvin Vale at Fannin.
I'll tell you, you had a list of wonderful, wonderful people as your principal.
I had the best.
And after you left teaching, what do you do?
Well, we fill our time. We make a lot of visits to the older folks and to the ones who are sick and those who are in the hospitals. And I still enjoy teaching in the Bible classes.
I would like for you to name your children and your grandchildren now. We know you've named them all when they were born, but where they are now and anything you'd like to say about your children.
Iris Kay married Ronald Benedict of Grand Prairie, and they live in El Campo, Texas at the present, and he's the minister there.
All right.
David lives in Midland.
Do they have children?
They have two twins, two
All
twin
right.
boys.
One's in Abilene, so I want you to name the boys.
Jared and Matthew. And they graduated from Abilene Christian College last May, and they're both working on their master's degree now.
That's wonderful. Okay, you're next.
David lives in Midland, and he married Delina Harton of Midland. They have two children, Jordan David and Alexa. And Jordan is 17 and Alexa is 13. And David teaches in the school system there. He teaches high school English and teaches at night at the junior college.
That is wonderful. All right, the baby.
And Mark married Sarah Farah. They live in Cedar Park, just out of Austin, and they have three children, Luke, Celeste, and Chloe.
Okay. What a wonderful family. What wonderful grandchildren. Isn't that wonderful? And now you have about the last minute. You have about the last minute, Stanley, to talk, look out into your camera, and just say anything you'd want to about whatever you'd like. This is your testimony time.
Thank you, Ruthie. We've tried to work helping people in any way that we might do that, whether it's in the hospital. And we've tried to go to the hospital a lot and visit those, and then the senior citizens, whatever needs they take care of. And we primarily do this for the Freetown Road Church.
Freetown Road Church of Christ, that's out on Freetown Road and Robinson Road, I believe. Yes, that's wonderful.
That's correct.
And Joyce, do you teach or anything now, or are you at Freetown Road?
At present, I'm teaching the ladies' Bible class. This is my quarter.
Oh, that is wonderful. Well, I want to thank you all so very much for coming to share your life with us. And Stanley, we forgot to tell how many years you've been teaching in Dallas and other places. Maybe we'll have to have another interview to tell them all the places that besides being a preacher, you've been a teacher and retired from where in teaching?
DeSoto.
DeSoto, Texas.
Yes, I did 13 years. I taught 13 years in DeSoto.
We had to get a little something in that before Lewis cuts us off because I had forgotten that part of it. I had always concentrated on Joyce being a teacher, but I knew you had been. Thank you all very much again for sharing with us. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.